provide them an invitation to go?
Never ordered anybody to do anything, so I would not call it an order. Yes, I invited them to attend the conference.
Could they have chosen to not go if they didn't want to go?
They could have, yeah.
And Colonel, there's evidence in the record that you approved or you knew that they were going to take a northern route to the conference there. Did you order them to take a northern route to the conference instead of taking the most direct route on I-10?
I didn't order them to do anything. I certainly told them and instructed them that I thought the northern route, my son is driven in that direction. I thought the southern route to be long, and I think we used the word boring. There was no formal document. We didn't sit there and Google a map or ask Siri or do any of those types of things. We simply talked about direction heading towards California. I have not driven that route in its entirety. So yes, I gave instructions to take the northern route.
Did you instruct them as an order, or did you just not tell them they couldn't take the northern route?
But these are competent individuals that I trust and trust today. So never a need for simply they had the option to go whatever way. We talked about several different things. I heard them talking about different things. Conversations primarily with Rodney, who we have a conversation all the time. So to sit there and say we had a formal conversation that's talked about every single thing along the way, it just wasn't in that manner. But I had no problem with the route that they took, the direction they went in, and yes, we did talk about that.
Did you give any of the appellants, Miller, Hyatt, or Williams, permission to violate state travel regs when traveling to San Diego for the IACP conference?
No, we didn't even talk about that. There's not a reason to. They've taken trips before, and I have full faith and confidence in it, so no, there's not a reason to do it.
Was there any discussion with any of the appellants about exceeding the allowable lodging rates along the way for the trip?
Again, not even a reason to talk about that. That's a judgment call on their part. Like I said, as I trust them today, I trusted them then, and allowed them to make those decisions.
Did you ever give the appellants, Miller, Hyatt, or Williams, permission to claim overtime hours that were not actually worked?
Wouldn't even be a conversation we have, because that'd be a conversation they would have with their supervisors. But my expectation is if they worked it, then they should get paid for it. I think that's something that they would have to justify. That's a process in state police they go through. I'm not part of that process at their level.
Did you approve any of the appellants to claim overtime hours for visiting the Grand Canyon or Las Vegas?
No, because we didn't talk about in specific every single place they're going to stop and exactly where they're going to go and what they're going to do. We didn't have that conversation about overtime. Again, that's a judgment call on them that I trust, and my expectation if they did something and it was state police related, they should be reimbursed for it. They should be paid for it. If in fact that they justify that they were on state time or doing state work.
Are things like visiting the Grand Canyon and Las Vegas considered state work in this case?
I think that'd be a question they have to answer as to what brought them there and what they were doing.
In this particular case, on their travel to San Diego for the IACP conference?
Well, a very short conversation I had with them was the fact that on the side trip of those types of things, I would have thought that you would not charge the state for that. But we never had lengthy discussions about any of those things. Again, like I said a moment ago, and I'll repeat it again, I trusted them and certainly respected their judgment and their call on it, and that was the extent of that conversation.
And you said you didn't look at a map, there was no Google map or anything to review. Were you aware that the Grand Canyon and the Las Vegas were off of the northern route that was discussed?
To be quite honest with you, I know it's in that direction. So no, I didn't know specifically in relevancy to where it is on the roadway. Whether you go up through Alexandria and Shreveport and come across and meet up in Amarillo, or you take the long route, Interstate 10 westbound, we didn't have those types of conversations. There was no reason to have that. They were driving there. That was approved. Their motor travel, the occupants that I knew over the car, certainly Rodney's wife, was certainly approved. And I told them to do that, and I told them to be careful and have a good time.
Did you approve any of the appellants to charge the expenses related to visiting the Grand Canyon and Las Vegas to the state?
No, we did not have that conversation.
When you were the superintendent, did you expect employees to submit timesheets and travel expense accounts claiming only time actually worked or expenses actually incurred?
Well, that is the process, so yes. Was that your question?
Yes, sir. I have no further questions.
Colonel Edmonson, in October of 2016, were you aware that there was a provision in the state travel? First of all, were you aware of the state travel guide?
I have not read it. It's Falcon front to back. I've certainly, I guess, utilized it, but to say I've read the entire document.
Sure. And I want to differentiate between now and back then, because I believe, because of this, a lot of people have read it. But it has a provision in it that says that you must take the most direct route if you're driving. Were you aware of that in October of 2016?
No, sir, it's not something I thought about.
I'd like to be clear. Your administration had a practice, did it not, that if someone would submit a travel expense voucher and it gets reviewed by the supervisors, that's what's supposed to happen, right? And if it got reviewed by the supervisors and they saw some problem with it, it wasn't filled out properly, some document was missing, were they then required to resubmit that to the trooper who was claiming the expense reimbursement for correction?
As I understand, that would be part of the process, yes.
And then it would be resubmitted and reviewed again and then submitted to management and finance. Is that correct?
Yes, it goes through a supervisor who reviews it, and if they have any question, concern, or whatever with it, they would talk to that individual.
I realize you were at a different level and wouldn't be reviewing these expense statements on a daily basis, but was it your understanding, sir, that that was sort of a routine thing, that people would have some deficiency in their expense statement or their time statement, and the supervisor calls it to their attention, tells them to correct it?
That's correct.
And then it gets resubmitted.
That's correct.
We just, if I understand correctly, sir, do you acknowledge that you approved Major Williams's timesheets for this trip?
I know they go through the office. I know they went through the chief of staff, Congress. So I would think he would sign off. So I don't know if I received them or not, but if I would have, I certainly would have reviewed it.
Sure.
If you have a document, I'd be glad to look at it.
I'm going to show you in just a second.
While Mr. Falcon is doing that, I just want to let everyone in the audience know It is a little warm in here. We have been told the AC has been adjusted. It's just gonna take a little while to get caught up.
Could I take off my coat? I got hot coming in.
Absolutely not. You can't roll your sleeves up though.
I'm going to show you Exhibit 41. I think there's a book in front of you, Colonel. If you look at it, J41.
Which one, this one?
There's two of them. Give it to City. Do you recognize what that
Yeah.
is? Darrell Williams timesheet?
Yes.
And is that your signature approving that timesheet, sir?
Probably a stamp, but yes.
I wanted to clear up that, we understand it was a stamp,
Yes.
but when Rhonda was your secretary at the time, right, or your executive assistant at the time, and she would only apply those stamps when you authorized that, is that
Absolutely.
correct?
She was very professional. She knew her job, and she certainly knew when you needed it, and I had no problem.
Okay. And that would be the same thing that's true with Lieutenant Colonel Dupreece. He had a stamp also, would only be applied when it was authorized, is that correct? So the fact that a stamp was used as opposed to your original signature is of no significance to you?
Absolutely not.
Same thing. Now, Girl, was that April? Hotel rooms are charged to the LaGuardia Board, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, they're assuming the trooper has been issued a LaGuardia Board. And that's authorized as a way of paying for them. Was there a procedure available in conjunction with the approval of hotel expenses or court card expenses that if the reviewing person who's assigned a responsibility had a question, they would contact the officer and get additional documentation and clarification before the court card expenses would be approved?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to show you Darrell Williams. Darrell Williams is the court card in conjunction with the trip for the hotel expenses. And the hotels were more expensive than what were allowed by the state travel guide. Did you approve those hotel expenses?
I did. I signed it. J87. Again, it's a stamp, but as I stated before.
Okay. And there's some documents that have been submitted in evidence. Candy Diaz, do you know who Candy Diaz is? Okay. If you might recall, she worked in management and finance and reviewed these statements and would be the person who would submit a request for additional documentation to the troopers. You don't have any specific recollection of Ms. Diaz's role in this particular situation.
Did not have a conversation with
But if she, if a trooper, if you sent a trooper somewhere, on a trip to California or wherever, and what was the process if they could not locate a room within the mandates of the state travel guide for overages? How would that get approved?
Well, they certainly have the opportunity they're on at that point to say wherever they need to. If they're not gonna do, they shouldn't have to stay in their car and do whatever. I mean, they can certainly make that decision at the time and go through a supervisor when they get back. I mean, so,
And get submitted, and it gets, if they have the appropriate documentation, it gets approved, isn't that correct?
yes.
And that was a standard process.
Very.
Did you require, sir, before they left to go to California, that they provide you with a detailed plan of where they were gonna stay, how far they were gonna drive in a particular day, where they might stay, which hotel they would stay in, where they'd eat breakfast, where they'd have dinner, things like that?
No, sir, we didn't. Like I said, I trusted them, as I do today. We never had that type of concept, and we didn't need to. There was not a need to do that.
Isn't it true, Colonel, that in the context of the respective assignments they had, these three gentlemen are some of your top people?
Absolutely.
Now, the Office of State Police seems to be making a big deal out of the question between ordered to do something or invited to do something. Was it the same to you?
I don't think of it that way. I've never ordered someone to do anything other than please step out of your car and let me see your driver's license. But to sit there, that's not a conversation that I would have with them, that I'd have to. If they had a concern over something, they would say it. They have no problem, I can assure you. They have no problem saying, wait a minute, Colonel, what do you mean by that? So, no, there was not a reason for a formal document. There wasn't a reason for an order or anything like that. We've been on many trips together.
I want to go back to the beginning. These people, the morning of the trip was October 10th, 2016. I don't expect you to remember that off the top of your head, but that was the morning of the trip. Did you see Rodney Hyde at breakfast that morning?
I did.
Okay. And who was present at breakfast, sir, if you recall? And
I don't recall who I was there. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of stuff going on during that time thing. I chose, I thought it was a good opportunity. We have a cafeteria, let's use it. We're in there, my legal staff would be in, my undersecretary would come in, the heads of the other agencies, fire marshal, motor vehicles would come in, we're interacting, we're doing business, we're talking about many, many different things.
sure.
So very informal, unless it needs to be formal. Rarely we did, we moved to another.
It was a method that allowed you to make contact with a group of your chief people.
That's correct.
On a regular basis. And what, do you recall the conversation with Rodney Hyde that morning?
I don't recall every single word.
Well, I wouldn't expect you to recall, but generally speaking, did you recall knowing that you were getting ready to go on the same trip yourself, you were just going to fly? Did you order? Did you direct them? I don't like the word order, because I understand the differentiation you're making, but I don't. Did you direct them to drive?
Yes, I did.
And why was that? Why did you want them to drive?
Well, we were talking about it over a year and a half ago. A lot of things have been said.
Sure.
By a lot of different people. So I don't remember the exact conversation, but in discussing even after with Rodney, I believed it was the least expensive way to go. I mean, that many people, I know it would be burdensome on there, and it would be a long drive. I certainly haven't made it. But I thought and believed that it would be the I guess, most cost-effective way to get there with those individuals. And plus, it would give us an opportunity, if needed. I thought we would need it at least once, possibly more, because I didn't know what all the intender is. I'm a former chairman of the S&B, which is all the colonels in the country. I was over them and represented them for almost 4 years, chairman for 2 years. So certainly I would go to many different meetings, and I might have needed that. So it was unknown how much we would need it, but I did instruct them, if you're all going to go, take the call.
And as Mr. Gerard said to you, they could have turned you down, I guess. I mean, that would have been something you'd have talked to them about, but you told them to go, and they were anxious to move
Yeah,
forward.
I think they're friends, as we all are. I mean, so yeah, I don't know if they knew, because they hadn't done it before, myself neither, just how long it's going to be and the magnitude of the trip.
On that morning, if we've had some testimony already, obviously, but I think you recall generally the discussion of taking the northern route. It's a nicer route.
There were so many different conversations going on, but absolutely, I remember the northern route. I don't know who came up with the word northern. It might have been me, it might have been someone else. It did not matter to me. I'm not a micromanager. You know, I'm the kind of individual that surrounds myself with highly competent people and expect them to do their job and have conversation. I thought it was very effective for 9.5 years. Got a lot of things accomplished. So, you know, that's.
Do you recall, sir, a discussion that they would stay in Las Vegas, or they hope to get to Las Vegas and maybe spend the night there?
I heard many different towns and cities and stuff like that to sit there and say, and I think that's been the crush of the whole thing, sit there and say there was a document placed in front of me, or they said, hey, we're going here, can we stay here? There was not a need for that conversation. I mean, that's their call on it. Like I said, I trust them, they're competent, they're professional, and so there wasn't a need for that level of a conversation.
Because of your trust and because of the fact that you knew these people to be hard workers doing their job.
As you said earlier, there was no Googling for the map. We didn't have a map out in front of us, and I mean, not that I remember. Different points. I'm thinking you're driving west, and certainly those locations are on the way.
I want to talk to you about along the way. Did you receive periodic updates as to their progress across the country?
I think we've already stipulated to that in our joint stipulations.
I believe we did stipulate to that, but I just want the colonel to say it.
We've stipulated to it.
I think we talked about the fact that although some of the stipulations are in there, we're going to allow it for purposes of getting to the next point. And if that's your goal, then that's okay.
I'll do it.
You have to.
Were you given periodic updates along the way in the form of text messages?
I don't remember exactly how many.
Do you remember receiving photographs of the group at the Grand Canyon?
Many different things along the way, and I certainly saw what I guess what appeared to be the Grand Canyon. And like I said, I don't remember all the different discussions, but Mr. Falcon, I didn't have a problem with any of that. In my mind, they're driving west. You know, I know how hard these individuals work. I know the job they do and what they do every single day. So I had no questions to have a detailed conversation. Okay, exactly where are you? What time is it? I think one of the only conversations back was that you need to get to San Diego.
Right. And I'm going to show you some photographs. That's been submitted in evidence already, and they have Emmy on the top and Mike. Could you identify who that person is?
Doesn't have one on?
This one.
No, she
Oh,
doesn't
she
have
was the number, what is it?
one on.
Let me find it, I can find it pretty easy. We are shuffling, I be shuffling a lot of paper over here with different numbers on it. 20. Yeah, let me do this since we have a group of pictures. Let me, what's my next number?
7.
I'm gonna mark a group of photographs. Six pages with a couple of photographs on each page. I'm gonna mark that as appellant number 7. And I'll ask you to.
Any objection, did you?
I believe it's exhibit 22.
Let's see. If it's
If I can
exhibit
see
22,
him, I might
that's.
be able to identify him.
We'll pause for a second.
These are colors. These are colors. I think they were given a number of different numbers. That's the problem. I wanted to put them all in one group.
No objection.
No objection?
Do you recognize these documents as items that you received, Frank?
Yeah, I, like I said, I didn't pay attention to a whole lot of them. I probably glanced through them. I had a lot of other things going on, but yeah, this is individuals in the car that are driving west and seeing things along the way, and I don't have an issue with any of them.
Conjunction with witnesses' testimony, I'd offer and understand.
So moved.
I had mentioned, or I had showed you, Darrell Williams's LaCarte card. Do you have a recollection as to whether or not you, had a role in approving the LaCarte cards of the other two gentlemen, Mr. Hyatt or Mr. Miller?
Not to my knowledge, but,
That be-
I don't know that they would go through me. I know the car does, if I would approve the car,
Right.
that would come back through me. I would expect most of it would go through the supervisor.
Okay, and as far as, I'll represent to you that supervisors of the line sign their cards too. That's what you were expected to do if they submitted proper substantiation for why they went over the designated amount, which happened to be $91 for a hotel in several of the places that they stayed. You don't have any qualms about the fact that that was approved by your administration, the charges on their LaCarte cards.
I think you have to let your supervisor do their job, and you certainly trust them to do that. If they approved it, then they would follow justifications up.
Sure. Let me, while we had mentioned Major Williams, do you recall, sir, an event on the Sunday of the IACP conference at the Torrey Pines Country Club?
I do.
And do you recall that there was a golf tournament sponsored by Motorola that morning?
I know they were playing golf. I didn't know it to be an actual tournament. I know they were playing golf, and they would also have equipment and things there on display.
Right. And specific to Major Williams, do you recall telling Major Williams that he should go and play golf with the Motorola people to interface with them during this event?
Well, I didn't know exactly who he was going to be playing with or hitting with at the time. I knew they were going to be chiefs, colonels, people around the country. I thought it was an excellent opportunity for him to interact, if that's what this is about, to look at some of the equipment. Both these individuals, Major and certainly Rodney, were involved in the body camera, was involved in a lot of different things of the state police, which we were the first state police in the country to have body cameras. And it's a lot of work that these guys are here to make that happen, to look at everything out there. So I absolutely told Darrell to represent me and to go there and to interact. And
I'll show you, we keep referring, we've jokingly referred to this as the blue book. We have a lot of Xerox copies. I just happen to have one original one. But on page 44, which is already in evidence, it indicated there was a networking event at 6 o'clock in the morning on that Sunday. You recall telling Darrell he should react with those people on your behalf.
yeah, I don't know what time the golf.
Well, I'm not suggesting you remember the time. I mean,
And I can assure you I wasn't there at 6 a.m.
but prior to that, do you recall? And I'm not sure that you would recall, but if Darrell testifies that you instructed him to interface with those Motorola people, ride out to Torrey Pines with them, play golf, and then meet you for lunch, you and your wife and several others in the group later for lunch and for further interaction. Does that sound right to you as to what happened?
He absolutely, on my behalf, everything. Probably golf tournament on Sunday.
Well, it was on Sunday. Did I say something Sunday?
And we were all there together, yeah.
And Rodney joined y'all,
Absolutely.
and y'all had lunch. Was it Tritech for lunch? Do you remember?
Well, it was, like I said, as a former chairman and serving in my position, as superintendent, I was invited, as were a lot of others. And again, it was a further opportunity for interaction. You had to go to different events to make sure that you saw the chiefs and you saw the colonels and the sheriffs and the different people were there and have those conversations. And,
That's what networking is, isn't it, sir? That important part of preparing people to be more proficient, particularly upper level officers, to interact with people, do research and part of the development of new programs.
correct.
And Colonel, Major Williams would have been acting on your behalf in that regard.
He did.
All right. Colonel, I'm going to show you a document that's previously been introduced as evidence as appellant number 3, and I'll ask you to look at that document. My question on this is really limited.
Okay.
But this was a news article that was in the, Mr. Jim Mustang printed it after apparently having a conversation with you. And the article was paged up on the morning of February 19th. It was in the newspaper. Did you, if you look at the fifth line down, fifth paragraph down, February 19th, if you accept my representation, was a Sunday. You see the language on Saturday, Edmonson said he had ordered an internal review of the journal, adjourning an inquiry he said could result in disciplinary measures and changes in the state police travel policy. You see that language?
I do. It's highlighted.
It is. Did you tell that to Mr. Mustang?
Well, we had a very lengthy conversation. I can only tell you that not everything we talked about is in here verbatim. It's our conversation, but
Well, I'm interested in that language specifically. Is that what you told him, that you had, on the day before Saturday, you had ordered an internal review of the journey?
I did. That probably would have been my terminology in a situation like that.
Okay. And how did you go, what did you do, Colonel? What did you order and who did you order?
Well, I think it should be a full explanation of how things happen.
I'm not trying to limit you. Go ahead.
I think when you look at the way this was approached and came to me in an interview in New Orleans, I think that's important. I was there to do an interview based on state troopers in the New Orleans area. And during that time period of that interview, as we were having a nice conversation, the camera quickly moved to my face and said, "Look at this, your troopers that you approved and you did sent to San Diego. Look at the thousands and thousands of dollars that was spent on overtime."
You were confronted unexpectedly, is what you tell me. Yes, go ahead.
So, and then of course we started getting a lot of questions, many conversations with Jim, and so I asked Kathy Flincham, who at that time was not head of internal affairs, but had certainly been there, and he certainly used. Is it major now? Yes, it should be. Good.
Tried to promote it to colonel, yes,
I said, look, and that's very routine for a supervisor, certainly for my level, because I receive a lot of information. And I asked him, I said, would y'all please look into this? Look into this, see what it is, see if it warrants anything. I remember having a conversation with Rodney. I said, guys, I want y'all to have a good time. I want you to go there and do whatever. I'm glad of that. I just didn't think, for a side trip, we should have charged, that to state police. He paid it back. You know, he went and paid it back.
That's the point, he paid it back, didn't he?
He certainly didn't question it, didn't argue with me. He didn't say anything. He did. Now, whether or not he had to at that particular time, that he could have given justification, could have gone into all kinds of different explanations, but he didn't. He said, okay, he paid it back.
He paid back some overtime, he paid back mileage and use of the vehicle, he paid back 2 days of hotels, 1 day in the Grand Canyon, 1 day in the, at Las Vegas.
I'm gonna object, is Mr. Falcon testifying, or?
I believe this is cross-examination, if I recall correctly, he's your witness.
If there's a question there, it's not testifying.
Well, let me say, Mr. Chairman, at this point, or Ms. Lenore, at this point, I can dig out the document and let him read it, but we all know what it says. We didn't look
It's
at
been
it 3 or 4
stipulated
times.
to also.
But the colonel doesn't know what it says. I'm trying to help
Just
him.
make sure you're asking questions.
Sure. But I would like to finish this someday. So, in any event, Colonel, he paid back. And Mr. Miller did also, did he?
I don't remember seeing all the documents, but yes, they did, because that's the kind of individuals they are.
Now, when you said that there might be disciplinary measures, that's the start of an investigation, isn't it?
Well, I think that's going to be the will of this commission to make that determination, Floyd. To say that I was ordering at that particular time, in my belief, an internal investigation, I didn't know what I had. I heard all this other information, but whether or not that was accurate or true, I had a conversation with them. And my belief is they should have been paid for everything they did at the state police. If justification put them in these areas, which they went that way, and they should have been reimbursed for it. You know, they came back and paid, I don't know what all they, and I just know they paid back stuff. They should have been paid for spending the night. They should have been paid for hours that they can justify that they were working on state police stuff. That's the process. I don't micromanage these things. I thought it was admirable that they did that. And that was the extent of it. There was no lengthy, formal conversation. I asked Kathy to look into this. I didn't ask her to go find out every little minute detail and start getting into it. I asked her to go look into it and let me know.
Sure. And because you were concerned that it might be a need for disciplinary action if it depended on what it turned up.
Well, based on all the phone calls and information, the public requests that were coming in, I said, you know what, let's I think the due diligence, that we review this and look into it.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask you to look at Exhibit J95 in the book. Review that.
Can you repeat the exhibit number, please? Mr. Falcon, can you repeat the exhibit number?
95. Well, it's not documents, as you can see.
I'm aware of it.
It indicates, this is on the February 21st, which if I understand correctly, it was a Tuesday. I mean, it was a Tuesday, 2017. It says that you, after learning last week of the fact that the agency representative traveled to a conference in San Diego, claimed overtime and traveled to Las Vegas, you began to review the circumstances, and you decided that you would do certain things would get done. Would you tell me what was the first thing you ordered done?
But you want to read this?
I want you to read paragraph number 1.
It says, Major Kathy Flincham, who's Patrol Region 1 Commander, Inspector, and former Internal Affairs Commander, Inspector, is conducting an administrative investigation determining violations of department policy and procedures.
And that's what you ordered Kathy to do, isn't it correct?
At this particular time, and at least on February 21st. I don't know if that was earlier that day.
Okay. What was the second thing that got done?
At the time, Major Williams was over internal affairs, so it was not certainly prudent that he should be involved in his position there. So we reassigned him from internal affairs pending the completion of the administration investigation.
Did you instruct management and finance to take steps to recoup the money paid, that was paid improperly or possibly paid improperly?
I don't remember the exact conversation, the exact wording of it, but in that context, and again, I think it's important here to sit there and say that all hotel fees and per diem claim will be repaid to the department. If in their testimony, they said, this put me in this area, I was doing state police stuff, and their supervisor signed off on it, you know what? They should be reimbursed for it.
And sure, and that's how I read this. In other words, that management and finance would recoup what was appropriate.
Yeah.
I mean, that was your intention, wasn't it?
And again, I don't have this stuff in front of me, but this is in response to I think a question from one of the media outlets.
I believe this, actually, Colonel, I think this was a press release by Doug Kane in your office.
I'm reading J96, which says to the news desk at WDSU.
But from Doug Kane.
Yes.
Yeah. But in any event, management and finance would recoup any money. In fact, they did recoup some money, did they not?
If it was, yes, if it was not justified or not.
Changing policy, was it changing some policies regarding overtime and compensation? You're really limited in overtime to what the Fair Labor Standards Act says, isn't that true?
You are.
Now, do you recall, sir, on Monday, February 20th, 2 days after the interview with Mr. Mustang, that Kathy Flincham, or Major Flincham, and Captain McClendon interviewed each of the three, each of the, actually the 4 participants in this matter. You recall that?
I do remember the fact that they were going to talk to him.
Well, when we say talk to them, they separated and talked to them one at a time.
I wasn't there.
No, I understand it, but you gave them some orders, and that's what that's what Captain said they did anyway. I certainly accepted his testimony in that regard. Talked to them for about a half an hour each. Is that what you instructed them to do?
No, I certainly didn't give them the time limits for it.
No, I understand. Again, you didn't micromanage that.
I did not micromanage. My direction to them was that, look, we have all this information. What hit me out of the blue in a routine interview, which I know those things happen, is that there was thousands and tens of thousands of dollars, and you approved this, you knew about it. And I mean, it wasn't at a level that I operated in, so to say I knew about it at that time, I didn't know about all of that. And I would not normally, I don't approve the overtime, I don't see that, I don't see the time sheets and those types of things. So I asked Kathy, I said, would you please review this and see if it was any type of investigation further review. I would expect that she would have followed some type of protocol, as they would in internal affairs, and document those types of things. So, like I said before, I believe that's going to be a matter of the commission to determine whether or not it actually started an investigation.
Yes. And there was a second day, the 21st, which was a Tuesday. We had some testimony that went back, Kathy went back to you, told you what they discovered on Monday, and you sent them back for some further interviews. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you would have expected that they'd have been given the administrative rights.
No, I wasn't involved in it.
I understand that, sir, but
I would expect at some point, absolutely, they have rights, and that would have happened at some point. That wasn't, I never micromanaged an internal affairs investigation to tell them how to do their job, and when we do, they certainly know that. So it's something they would have done.
Because the civil service rules, the state police civil service rules, the law officers' Bill of Rights, and the policies of your department all say, once an investigation commences with the possibility of disciplinary action, they need to be read their rights. They need to have an opportunity to have a lawyer, consult a lawyer, get a lawyer, have everything recorded. You would have expected that to occur, didn't you?
I believe so, yes.
Now, did you recall seeing Thurman? You attended the conferences in San Diego, did you not?
Yes.
You went to the meetings during the day and met with people throughout the day?
I have a full schedule.
You remember, there seems to be some question as to whether or not Thurman Miller was at the conference on Friday, which would have been in October. That would have been the 14th of October. Do you have a recollection at all about whether you saw Thurman, whether or not he was viewing exhibits, attending meetings, what he might have been doing that day?
I know they were all doing those type of things. To tell you the exact day, I certainly don't know.
Colonel, as I understand it, you directed, look, we want to cover as many of these events. We want to get as much research done, see as much of these pirates as possible, and you sent people in different directions in order to accomplish that.
That is correct, and I think what's already been stipulated, and I think it's important to note again, was not just a singular conference. This is a multifaceted meeting that, from research and development to documents on legal and internal affairs, training academy, curriculum, all things that state police was kind of the forefront. So certainly you're talking about individuals here that are highly competent, very well respected, understand where we're trying to head as a department, and they were all doing exactly that.
Did you rely on Rodney? Was Rodney in charge of transportation of the vehicle out there?
I didn't bring Rodney there to be in charge of transportation. I brought Rodney there with his expertise. If he drove a road, that was certainly something that just happened at a particular time. But to sit there and say I brought him as a taxi driver, no one was brought there as a.
And I'm not trying to infer it. I think you just understood where I was going with the question. But Rodney had responsibilities to be available to get people from place to place in the state police vehicle if it became necessary. Is that right?
Absolutely. If I'd have called Rodney and needed something, absolutely, he would have done it.
Rodney has particular expertise in policy development, doesn't he?
He does.
And did you rely on that expertise to a substantial event over the years that you were the colonel?
Absolutely did.
You have faith in his ability to interpret policies?
I do. We had lengthy discussions with a lot of different individuals, and yes, I did trust his opinions, his information.
We had a stipulation yesterday, if I can find it. Here we go. That Rodney's evaluations in the years preceding this conference were either outstanding or exceptional. You familiar with that, were you not?
Well, I didn't see every single one of them, but that would certainly be.
Was that, let me ask you this, would that have been your evaluation of Rodney Hyde?
It would have.
You relied upon him,
Absolutely.
and you wanted his you wanted him to see what there was to see at that conference insofar as new products, exhibits, and so forth, at both conferences, both Dispose, S&P, ICAP. You wanted them to be exposed to all of that, didn't you not?
Yeah, there was no actual directives given, the orders given. There wasn't a need for that. So, I mean, they certainly knew what they needed to do, and they had always done that. Each of those gentlemen, I know you singled out Rodney in the situation, but those gentlemen to your right, they all know that. And they're highly competent, and that's why they're there. They're not there as drivers or those types of things. They knew what they had to do, and they did it.
And it would be your impression, sir, that the state of Louisiana or the Office of State Police benefited by their participation in the events that they had participated in, the meetings they attended, the exhibits they viewed, and the interaction with the vendors to gain a familiarity with those products? Do you believe the state of Louisiana gained from that?
They absolutely benefited. When you look at state police and where we were heading as an organization with our training, it's important and critical that we look at best practices around the country, what worked and didn't work in different cities, where they had different events that caused negative things towards the police, towards public safety. When you look at equipment, the cameras, those types of things, where we were heading as an organization, the technology changes. We sit here in this hearing, technology's probably changed 5 times. So that level is something that, quite honestly, the rest of the state, we would get calls daily on our policies and procedures, on all the different mannerisms in which we prided ourselves in our department. And it's because of the people, it's not because of Mike Edmonds, because of the people every single day that do the work, from a desk employee to all the way up. So yes, they did their job, and they did it very well.
Colonel, I'm going to show you a document If you look at Exhibit 84, J84. Take a minute and look at that, sir.
I have it here in my book.
Okay, you recall the Office of State Police receiving that inquiry from Mr. Aswell in November of 2016?
We received a lot of requests from Mr. Hasbro. So to say this exact one, I didn't read every one of them. They wouldn't normally come to me.
I take it this went to Mr. Gerard and to Doug Kane.
Correct.
We know what Mr. Gerard's position was. What was Major Kane's position?
Major Kane is, I guess, he's the official spokesperson from our office and for the Office of State Police, as well as the Department of Public Safety Services. He oversaw that program.
It would have been his responsibility working with legal to respond to public record requests.
Yes, facilitating.
Do you recall, Colonel, when this request came in, to whether or not this for the first time alerted you, or I don't know what I can do is actually whether it alerted you that there was some question about meals and hotel costs for the people that attended the San Diego conference?
Ask me that again, I'm not following you.
Okay. Do you recall November 2016 being alerted to the fact that there was an inquiry by the public in the form of a public records request questioning the hotels, meals, expenses related to the IACP conference?
I just don't remember exactly how that was.
Sure, and I wouldn't expect you to remember the date or anything like that. That's why I showed you the document. My question is, at that time, did you consider starting an investigation to see what it was all about?
No, I did not. I didn't remember this date or any specific dates in any of it.
I should get a shot of here for a cutaway. At least I didn't have to drive an hour to get here. Thought I was giving myself plenty of time, right? Get in here with the first stuff. Walking back out the car to get the rest of the stuff I need. Here comes Edmonson walking out like mother.
I'm sure you know the document, Colonel, and it's already been introduced to Edmonson. I don't remember off the top of my head which number. But
Introduced by you?
I think it was introduced. Well, I might have introduced it.
Fire for the cars.
If you just tell me.
It's the May 11th letter from David Clinton to Colonel Edmonds, May 11th, 2007. It's in the joint.
We don't have it. Unless it's on here.
Is it in the joint? I thought it was.
Who is it from and to?
It's from David McClendon, Major McClendon, or Captain McClendon's son. Colonel Edmonds in May 11th. About the end. I think it's in there somewhere. We're gonna do this anyway. We'll show you a document.
I'm gonna charge you for my camera. We're gonna take about a 10-minute break, give you enough time that and let
Exactly. Like, where's the car?
With all the news, since we're not in the middle, turn off the lights as well.
Thank you. I don't have no further questions.
I have some follow-up questions. Colonel Edmondson, you were shown the railroading timesheet, and you talked about how Rhonda stamped it, and that was the process. Do you recall if you personally reviewed that timesheet before Rhonda was given authority to stamp it?
I don't remember, Michelle. I could have, but I don't remember. And I racked my brain trying to think if I saw it. It would have been routine, and from what I saw in it, it was routine. I would not have had any questions.
And what about the same for the McCart bills? Before she stamps it, do you recall reviewing it?
I don't, but let me tell you something. I trusted her especially. She certainly did everything that she was supposed to do and could do in a situation, so I'm no following her name being on it.
So could you say at the time it was stamped that you knew whether or not the expenses on the McCart bill or the expenses on the time on the timesheet was accurate?
I cannot.
And Colonel, we stipulated to the travel and training request, and on August 10th, 2016, Sergeant Hyatt's trip to San Diego was pre-approved. Is there any reason why in that 2 months, the travel route and lodging along the way could not have been planned?
We didn't have any discussions involved in that.
But are you aware of any reason why arrangements couldn't have been made in that 2 months?
We didn't have any conversations. I had no reason to ask, wasn't thinking in that manner, so, no.
For Hyatt to make arrangements in 2 months? Was there any reason, anything that you know of that prevented him making those arrangements?
Not to my knowledge.
Colonel, there was a question asked about Rodney being there, I'm sorry, Sergeant Hyatt being there to provide transportation at the event. We've had testimony that Trooper Alex Neskodinsky also went on the trip. Who actually drove you to Torrey Pines?
I don't remember exactly who it was. They were in the car. I think it was Alex. Alex was from the area, certainly knew the route, knew the people. So it was a proper thing to do at the time.
Did you know before you saw Trooper Neskodinsky in San Diego that he was going on this trip?
I was not aware of any conversations I had. I know that Charlie, when I did find out, said that he had spoken about it, but I had no problem with him being there.
And do you recall what his role was in San Diego?
Well, I mean, he's involved in intelligence for state police, so certainly opportunity. Our fusion center is nationally acclaimed, as well as our DNA laboratory. And so certainly with him being there, being able to have a conversation about ongoing things that were affecting police across the country as well as around the world, that was an opportunity for him to be there and attend those meetings.
Okay, and he was, at the time, a trooper with 2 years' experience. Were there more senior people in his chain of command in the same section who could have attended?
Well, that wasn't a conversation we had.
The news article that you were shown, Colonel Edmondson, from February 19th, said that you had ordered an internal review. And there's been a stipulation that on February 20th, Captain David McClendon, assigned to the training academy at the time, and Major Captain Flincham, assigned to technical support at the time, met with the appellants in Major Flincham's office. And they asked him 2 specific questions. Did you get prior approval to stay at the Grand Canyon in Las Vegas? And if so, who authorized it? Did they conduct this inquiry at your direction?
No, they did.
Okay. And you mentioned that Major Flincham had been in internal affairs. Had Captain...
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand if you said yes or no to the previous question.
It was no.
No? Okay.
What was the question?
The question that they asked the questions at his direction, he said yes.
Okay, so can you re-ask the question, please?
On February 20th, 2016, Captain David McClendon, assigned to the training academy at the time, and Major Flincham, who was assigned to technical support at the time, met with appellants individually in Flincham's office in the headquarters support building and spoke with them regarding their travel to San Diego, which included specifically asking, did you get prior approval to stay at the Grand Canyon in Las Vegas, and who authorized it? Was that at your direction?
Well, certainly the inquiry into it, I didn't go over questions for them, details of how they conducted it, or exactly when they would do those interviews. But yes, I mean, I was aware that they were going to talk to individuals.
So if Captain McClendon testified that those were the 2 questions they were instructed to answer, you dispute that?
I don't remember having the exact conversation, but would have said these are the questions we're going to ask them.
Okay, and you mentioned Major Flincham and Captain McClendon at the time both had experience in internal affairs, is that correct?
2 highly competent individuals in that area.
Have you ever had any experience where they did not conduct an administrative investigation in accordance with the proceedings and guidelines, such as giving administrative rights, giving oaths, and advising individuals of their right to an attorney?
I'm not aware of that.
So if now Major McClendon were to testify that they were directed by you to not place the individuals under oath or to give them, report the meetings because it wasn't a formal investigation, would you dispute that?
I don't remember the exact conversation. Michelle, I don't remember the exact one.
You mentioned that if state police business put the appellants in those areas, they would be able to claim the expenses relating to it. But did the state police business put them in the areas of the Grand Canyon and Las Vegas, or was that a decision that they made on their own?
I think that'd be a question you have to ask them. What I said is that it would require justification. They could justify that to their supervisor, that would be the direction they would take.
And the travel and training authorization that's been introduced into evidence, they were given permission to go on the trip. At any time, did you give them permission to arrive a day late at the conference?
We didn't have a conversation on any of that.
Were you aware that they arrived a day late?
Excuse me, I don't believe there's a day late. That's not the truth. That's not the stipulation. They arrived at 3:30, as you well know, on the day the convention began.
Okay, system. Did you give any specific permission to arrive late to the SPO's conference?
I don't remember any formal conversation on that, say a time or anything like that.
And in fact, one of the pictures that you reviewed that are in evidence was a text message to you from them at the Grand Canyon. And I believe your response says, y'all better get to San Diego. Do you recall that?
I do recall that.
I think that was at the Hoover Dam, yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you have the exhibit? Do you want to see the exhibit again? Or do you
I don't know.
recall your response? That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Colonel.
Thank you.
Yes, you are. Commissioner.
Colonel, how are you?
Very good.
The last time I think we saw each other was we were speaking to the Rotary in Shreveport in 2016.
Remember it well.
There you go. They do too. You did an
I
outstanding
want to talk
job
about
there.
LSU football.
Just have a few follow-up on a couple of issues. Can we put the map up on the wall?
Well,
Sorry about that. I just want to be clear on a couple of different things, because some of the information that's been submitted in some of your testimony today contradicts itself. I just want to be clear that you were not specifically, or you're testifying to the fact that you were not specifically aware that they took the northern route, but you didn't have a problem with them taking the northern route as long as the means met the end of getting to San Diego in a timely manner for the conference.
We talked about so many different things when they left there, and I didn't know if they were going through Shreveport or whatever, but certainly the northern route is, I'm looking at the map there, which we didn't sit there and remember looking at a map specifically to that, but my belief is that they were going to take the northern route, and I didn't question anything else.
Sure. And getting back to looking at the map, which we'll have to look at over the heads of the reporters here. You can see the northern route, and you can see the side trip off of I-40 to the Hoover Dam, which is where, well, let me back up, where they stopped at the Grand Canyon Village.
Yeah.
Certainly off the route. No state police business up there that you're aware of.
Not that I'm aware.
Okay. From there, they reached the Grand Canyon on the 11th. They left on the morning of the 12th from the Grand Canyon, and then they reached Las Vegas that same day. Their lodging, according to the documents of your internal investigation, 3 hours of state time of travel that day. And so looking at the map, the next morning of the 13th, after spending the evening in Las Vegas, they leave late, which I think is been stipulated. They don't leave early that morning. The conference started on the 13th. The SPO's conference started on the 13th. So they leave, I believe, at 10:30 that morning. They're not credited with state police time because they're not back on the I-40 route until noon. They reach the conference at 3:30. So they've missed essentially the first day of the SPO's conference. I think it continued on into that night. And so, as the leader of the organization, would you have expected your men to possibly leave from the Grand Canyon that morning, travel, which would have been in keeping with the hours that they traveled the previous 2 days, probably 8 hours or so, maybe even 9. They would have reached San Diego on the night of the 12th, allowing them to get a good night's sleep, be ready to go for the conference on the 13th. Would you have expected them to do that, or would you?
Ms. Carver, I wasn't with them.
I'm not asking you if you were with them. I'm just saying, as a level of expectation, they know they have to be there at the start of the conference. They've got time to make it from the 12th to the 13th. They make a conscious decision to say, we're not going to worry about getting there on time. We're going to go to Las Vegas and get up the next morning and go. They didn't get up too early the next morning, and they get in San Diego at 3:30 after the conference has started. I'm just saying, as the head of the organization, would you have a level of expectation? You've commented that these were some of your most competent officers. They had been to conferences before. And I agree with you. I've been in there. I've been a chief. You can't micromanage your men at that level, but I'm just asking you, would you have a level of expectation because of their competency, because of their history, because of their trust that you had in them, that they wouldn't take advantage of you or the taxpayers, and they would end up in San Diego on time to be at this conference?
I would have that level of expectation, would have a conversation if I needed to.
Okay, thank you. My second question goes to, because they are seasoned officers, and you made the comment that they had traveled before, in turning in their timesheets and their time and their expenses, usually the things that I see on here are rookie mistakes made by people that have never traveled before and don't have that experience, don't know where to look for how much to spend on a meal or tier rates or those types of things. And so, in any previous travel documents that you're aware of, that these members have submitted, or any members for that matter, were they basically on par with what had been done in the past? And I speak specifically to Mr. Hyatt's taking 24 hours in his original submission for I believe the 3 days of travel, including his sleep time, the detours to the Grand Canyon, Vegas. Was that typical of the organization at that time?
Well, it's not typical, but I think it's certainly something that a conversation would have to take place with the supervisor himself to be able to justify that, Ms. Crawford. So I wasn't privy to that conversation. I understand that it was adjusted, the concern I had on those individuals, and there was no directional order for me that you definitely pay this stuff back.
Sure.
They did that on their own, which I thought was well, and the fact that they did that. My belief, if you're working on state police time, if you're actually doing things, and I know Rodney carries his computer around with him, he's constantly on it, phone calls. We had a couple of phone calls that I really remember more than anything else about the cameras and the things like that, the people he's going to talk to, because we want to make sure we saw all of them.
Sure.
This is a unique trip. No one's done that before. I don't think there was any thoughts in the matter. If I'm driving that way, and this is nothing new, I've told that to them, and I would have gone and looked at these things. I just wouldn't have charged for them.
Sure.
I did not have a problem. They did. That was the only thing with this whole thing that concerned me or questioned me was the overtime. It needed to be justified, and the use of when they where they stayed or what the cost was and those types of things. That was the only thing I had a concern with. Other than that, I trusted their judgment and still do.
We follow up with the adjustments that were made to the overtime and the expense billing. Am I correct in saying that that was not done until the media attention was brought to bear regarding the potential or the possible or the alleged overcharging of overtime and expenses? This event happened in October. If I'm right, the adjustments were not made until October 16. The adjustments were not made until 17, somewhat at your direction. So it's...
I don't know when the exact adjustments were made as far as the time concerned. I don't know that. I don't have that information in front of me.
I believe that's correct. So what I'm saying is the gentleman didn't freely come to you and say, hey, we've made an error. We need to adjust this until it was brought to their attention, until the media brought it to their attention, your attention.
I don't have those exact dates in front of me, Carl. That's something y'all would have to see.
One more. I'm going to take you to Sunday the 16th in the Torrey Pines event, the golfing event, and the networking event. I'm familiar with those. I've been to fire chief conferences before. I'm a terrible golfer. It would be dangerous for me to be out there. And so, but I have gone to them before because it does provide the things that you said. It was a unique opportunity to be out there without the pressure of a classroom or what have you, and sometimes some great conversations have happened out there. I've never once charged the city of Shreveport for those events. You mentioned that the lunch at Torrey Pines, or someone had mentioned the lunch at Torrey Pines, it's a sponsored event. I'm assuming the golf tournament was sponsored, so members didn't pay. Would you have that information?
I don't have that level of information.
Okay.
Originally, my going there was certainly as a networking event, brought individuals with me. But at one point, I was supposed to speak there.
Okay.
That didn't happen. You know, when you get there, and it's maybe not as formal, and not everybody's there at the same time, so
Right.
we didn't do any of that.
Let's progress to the lunch then. You did go to the lunch.
Yes.
Okay, and you said something about TriTech. Was possibly the sponsor of the lunch.
One of the names that were there.
Did they pay for the lunch that day?
I do not know.
Mr. Crawford, that is not one of the charges in this matter, and so for the record, I'm going to object to expansion of the charges. There's no charge that somebody got a free lunch on the Sunday of the Torrey Pines proceeding. That was not charged.
So noted. I'm going to ask you the question again. On the Sunday, the 16th, the lunch that was provided, was it paid for by the vendor to your knowledge?
I do not know that answer.
Did they charge you anything for the lunch?
No, they did not.
Okay. In document J52, I'd ask you to turn there to the second page. I believe that this is Mr. Williams' amended expense summary. Colonel, if you look at date 10/16/216, and if you look across at the tiered rate at 3, you see the X's?
I do.
The B, I'm assuming, stands for breakfast. Is there an X?
Yes.
The L stands for lunch. Is there an X?
Yes.
And the D stands for dinner. Is there an X? Is there an X?
Yes, sir, there is.
Okay. Total how much that day?
$61.
Mr. Williams was with you when you had lunch that day?
They were at the event, they were talking to different individuals. To say they sat down and ate with me, I don't even remember that. I don't remember.
They were there for the lunch. They were there with you at the
They were
lunch.
there with me. And the lunch flowed through everything.
Sure.
A lot of vendors were set up. Motorola had some of its equipment in the area. I think you could walk through there. Whether that was going to be a formal sit-down with different people speaking, that just didn't happen, Mr. Crawford. And,
I'm just saying that if it's lunchtime, I'm just talking from a normal person, taxpayer in Louisiana. If it's lunchtime, vendors are there with food. I'm going to take advantage of that food and not leave there and go somewhere else and have lunch, is what I'm saying. One of the other things that's been testified to this week is the fact that you directed or your commanders directed the individuals that attended the conference to go to the after-hours events, and they were critical, because that's when, again, like the golfing, some of the most important discussions happen. Deals are made to buy equipment. That's when you can have some really good one-on-one time. I've done that. But I've also done that where those dinners and those events were sponsored and paid for by the vendors. So to your knowledge, was anything that week that was a vendor-sponsored event, dinner paid for by the vendor?
Objection.
Let him finish his question.
I'm sorry.
Then we'll note your objection.
Are you finished, Mr. Grover?
I'm finished.
Objection, that is not a charge in this matter. It's outside of the four corners of the letters of discipline in this matter.
I disagree.
Well,
You have expense reports where individuals have charged the state for 3 meals a day, every day that they're there. I'm just simply asking a question of you. When you go to some after-hours events, as it has been testified this week, that some members were discharged to, some of those events often include dinners that are paid for by the vendor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
It's normal.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fox.
Good morning, Colonel. How are you? During the conference, at any time, did you put any individual trooper on standby for any individual task during the conference?
Not a direct conversation, but certainly Rodney and the rest of them knew that we had a lot of different things going on. It was very critical, especially in areas that we were working in within state police, like I said, the body cameras, to be available to talk on those different things. But to say that I told somebody you're on standby, whatever, we didn't have that level of conversation.
Based on your expectations of a trooper to be available,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the first part.
based on your expectations of the trooper to be available, would that trooper claim time if he was understanding to be available at your disposal or the command staff's disposal? Would he claim time during that time when he's not tasked with any particular assignment?
I would certainly think that if I told an individual, I need you to be on standby ready at any moment, that person would be compensated for that, in my expectation. But I think you have to look at the situation in its totality.
Would it be, if he was called for a task, at that point he would claim his time from the point you called him for an assignment, or would he be paid the entire time during that assignment?
We're speculating on nothing specific. My expectation, if someone is working on the job, they should be compensated for it. Would be the best answer I could give on that.
Do any of the parties limited to the areas of questioning by the commission have any follow-up questions? Mr. Brown? Mr. Falcon?
May this witness be released?
Yes.
sure. Thank you.